I do think that one day we will have a $10,000 God candle, meaning that Bitcoin's price measured by dollar will go up $10,000 in a day. 10 years ago, the idea that one Bitcoin could even be worth 10K, that in itself would get you sent off to therapy. Most people just aren't ready for what's going to hit. And that is, they don't appreciate what a true digitally based supply shock will do to the price. If you're doing any kind of Bitcoin advocacy, that's like a really obvious area of your life where you can just choose to be as pure as the driven snow. If you can't find a way for Bitcoin to make you happier, then you're doing it wrong.
Hi, DN Mr. Comply. Welcome back on the show.
Hey, gosh, this is the first podcast I haven't been invited back. No, that's not true. I've been invited back to Pleb Underground, but I was just really honored that you thought to have me back on. And I regard your podcast as just phenomenal. And the fact that you wanted me back as a guest really made my week. So happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That is really nice to hear.
Well, I'm just thrilled to be back, and I have a lot of stuff top of mind right now. I haven't... I'm always paying attention to Bitcoin. I'm probably giving it an hour or two most days. It's not my career, but it's something I'm passionate about, and I'm pretty heavily invested in it. So I'm always paying attention to Bitcoin. But your invitation and knowing that this show was coming up forced me to actually, I just finished spending a couple, 3 hours of pretty intense work this morning. So I decided that, hey, what better way than to prepare for your podcast than to dive back into my Bitcoin basics essay for the first time in a couple of years and read the thing through from start to finish and to update everything that needed updating. So I updated 3 different figures. I added some links. I updated the gold versus Bitcoin price and cleaned up some of the English a little more. So I just finished literally 20 minutes ago, like a pretty hardcore 3-hour editing session to basically make my essay current as of today. And that would not have happened had you not given me the impetus to, get on my ass and start working. Usually you say get off your ass and start working, but when you're a writer, you actually have to get on your ass, or as Richard Rhodes beautifully puts it, apply ass to chair. So...
Yeah, it's like if you're working in front of a computer or like writing something down, you're constantly on your ass, but you're working your ass off.
Yes, yeah, yes, it's a conundrum. It's but yes, both things are simultaneously true. But the important thing is that I am doubly caffeinated versus my normal day of work because I needed to do all this editing, and now I'm here with you, so I'm just raring to go.
Really, really cool. And your essay is really cool, and maybe we can touch on that because a lot of people probably haven't seen the first episode as the podcast grew quite a lot. What the essay is about, and maybe also how your view on Bitcoin maybe has changed, and what kind of your update thoughts on that are.
Yeah, I don't know how much my view on Bitcoin has changed because, whatever I may have going for me as a Bitcoin pleb who's kind of outspoken, my technical grasp is not impressive. I mean, but I think lacking an advanced technical grasp often makes you more firmly in command of the basics, which is, hey, you know, 1 Bitcoin always equals 1 Bitcoin. And all you need to do is pay some attention to the greater macroeconomics picture about how the world's economies are heading into an abyss involving money printing leading to hyperinflation. So, I mean, you know, my convictions have only deepened about the greater economic picture and where Bitcoin fits into it. But I don't think that my technical understanding of Bitcoin has grown by leaps and bounds since the last time you had me on. Actually, you know, one thing happening in my life is that I have spent the last 7 years or so traveling, and I've been to about 40 countries over the last 7 years. And I'm tired of it. I'm tired of all this travel. I mean, it's been fantastic, but I finally reached the point where in a few weeks I'm going to jet off to Europe and go to a few more places, and then I'm going to settle down for at least a couple of years. And at that point, I want to you know, probably pick up like a Start9 solution or Umbrel or something along those lines, and you know, spin up my own node and sort of dial in more technical abilities so that I can be, what's the term they use? Like, you know, like you know, not just a Bitcoiner, but like a true first-class sovereign Bitcoiner. And that to do that, I need, as George Carlin puts it, a place for my stuff. I need my own bed. I need my own desk. And I can't just be, you know, living this itinerant life, going from coffee shop to coffee shop. So I'm really looking forward to having that. And, you know, assuming I get a third invitation on your podcast 6 or 9 months hence, I may be able to bring a lot more to the party, talking about my the progression of my technical aptitude, because I feel like that's lacking. And you know, I am thinking about, like, you know, because I do have a background as a technical writer and somebody who kind of specializes in writing introductory materials, I think that once I learn sort of the finer points of self-custody and I have my own setup using the very latest technologies and software, I might be exceedingly well positioned to explain it to less technical people. I mean, you know, Ben Perrin does a terrific job of that already, but I think that the appetite and the necessity for entry-level technical writing surrounding Bitcoin is likely to go through the roof as we approach the event horizon of hyper-Bitcoinization.
That's very true, because a lot of the content is now focused on why Bitcoin. And once more and more people get it, the content for how actually we are doing those Bitcoin stuff, like the technical aspect of self-custody, running your own full node, everything like that. That was BTC Sessions Ben Barron is doing, gets more and more interesting. And I had Ben on my show, and he's an incredible guy. And he says he really wants to focus on the how, and a lot of people are focused on the why, like Sailor, big people like that. They're all like telling you why to buy Bitcoin and why it's a good idea. But then the how people are less, just because it's a smaller market. But it will get increasingly more important.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, I don't think that I am at all gifted when it comes to my ability to my technical aptitude in learning kind of lower level technologies. And for somebody like me who seems to be crossing a border every month with my MacBook, I don't even want to be running my own node or bringing my private keys with me. And, in any event, my brain is not sufficiently functional for me to even possess a brain wallet when it comes to crossing borders. So, I think, I've never said this before. And I guess there's, if you ask 100 people what the first rule of Bitcoin ought to be, you'll get 100 different answers. But, maybe I would say the first rule of Bitcoin is understand your limitations. I think there are people in the Bitcoin community who are relatively sophisticated at it, who actually, in their heart of hearts, believe that grandma can run her own private node. And, it's like, dude, that's delusional. Grandma thinks that Facebook is the internet. She is not ever going to run her private node or do a checksum of the things that she's just downloaded. Are you out of your mind? But, I think when it comes to knowing your limitations, some people are just so technically off the charts and skilled that they don't realize that their main limitation is not knowing that there is just this enormous chasm between them and the rest of society. And, I think maybe that's something that I try to bring to the table, is that, my Bitcoin Basics essay is not meant for Lynn Alden or Matt Odell. It's meant for normal people who are just edging into the world of Bitcoin and don't yet know 1% of everything they need to know to start making informed choices.
That's very true. I already looking forward to the end routine of the podcast, because the question for the end routine today fits perfectly to that. But I will try to keep it off for the end routine.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit back to where I'm trying to do with repeating guests, because our view on Bitcoin mostly stays the same once we have done the research. And Bitcoin itself, the whole premise around it is that it does not change every month like some other protocols or anything like that. So, but what is actually changing a lot is the world around Bitcoin and how people interact with Bitcoin and how many more people interact with Bitcoin. What was kind of standing out for you since the last, let's say, 1 year where you have been on in the Bitcoin world?
Well, I have only ever made one prediction regarding Bitcoin. And that is that I think that there is absolutely positively going to be a supply shock, and that supply shock will be fundamentally of a different magnitude than any sort of supply shock that happens in the physical world, because Bitcoin has the absolute cap of 21 million. If we're going to have an oil supply shock, different nations have the incentive to cheat or to drill. And so the supply cap is anything but hard. Same thing with gold, same thing with any other physical commodity. But with Bitcoin, you have this absolute unforgiving virtual nature of there will only ever be 21 million coins, and all of them are verified anytime you move a coin. So like an absolute hardcore cap on the supply exists within Bitcoin. And my contention has always been that, hey, I can't tell you when it's going to happen, but we are getting closer every month to having a supply shock. And I think when that happens, you get the Samson Mao God candles. I do believe. Well, first of all, you should never measure Bitcoin by dollars, but I guess we all kind of fall into that hole, and so I'll fall into that hole knowingly right now. I do think that one day we will have a $10,000 God candle, and meaning that Bitcoin's price measured by dollar will go up by $10,000 in a day, and I would bet a large sum of money that that will happen in the next 10 years. Will it happen next month or next year? I don't know, but I've always believed that a supply shock was going to happen, and it just feels like it's coming a lot closer now, even though I can't tell you the date. And I think that people are unprepared because even though we've seen this massive run up in Bitcoin over the last 10, 15 years, even though it's up something like 200 times since I bought my first Bitcoin, I think we have never seen a true supply shock with Bitcoin, and I believe that one is coming. And why do I believe that? Well, just yesterday, New Hampshire approved a crypto reserve. Now, it drives me crazy that it's a crypto reserve and not a Bitcoin reserve, but most of it's going to be Bitcoin, or one would hope, since New Hampshire is historically a pretty smart part of the United States. But there are more states on the way. And then you look at what Michael Saylor at MicroStrategy is doing. I mean, at this point, he has captured 555,000 Bitcoin. Now you have Jack Mallers' 21 company getting in with its own massive purchasing. Like, to me, it's only a matter of time since until the last of the milkshake is suddenly and abruptly sucked up, and there's just no more thousands of easily, cheaply purchased coins laying around. And I think when that moment hits, it is going to be as abrupt as somebody drinking a milkshake out of an opaque glass, and all of a sudden they go from thinking they have plenty of milkshake to realizing, oh, it's all gone.
It's the moment when you have a really nice drink and you're drinking, and all of a sudden there's nothing coming out anymore, and you're like, oh shit. It's like, yeah. I know that a lot. I just wanna your prediction is already true with the God candle. Apparently, I was curious because I thought I heard something, and actually I was not sure if I just imagined that, but apparently we had on February 3rd already our first God candle. Pierre Rochard also apparently posted it on February 3rd within a single 24-hour period. I think previously it was like the biggest one was like, I don't know, 7,000 or something like that. But we have many more candles to go as the Bitcoin fair base is like the Divine Candle 50K, and now we're switching to Twitter, or the Omega Candle and the Alpha Centauri. I didn't knew about those namings.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're sharing your screen and I'm looking at it, and I just gotta say that God candle is kind of cheating a little because it's mostly wick and very little candle. There wasn't a whole lot of change from day to day. When I think of God candle, I'm not thinking about wick. I'm thinking about, like, one day Bitcoin is 120 grand and the next day it's 130 grand, like just a big $10,000 overall increase from one day to the next, and no cheating by talking about downtrends and uptrends that aren't lasting. But I don't know. I mean, if they want to call that a God candle, yeah, okay, fine. But I one day we'll see a real God candle that's actually candle and not wick.
Yeah, this is Bitcoiners really like to celebrate whenever the first instant is like as long as it's like is there's like a little bit evidence of something actually broke, people want to be the first to report it. Like it's the nature of social media, and yeah, you're right. So like really God candle for me, 10K is like, even if it's sustainable for me, like God candles seems to be something bigger. Like I don't know, like 10K seems to be almost small to do that, but like when we reach out those levels.
Yeah, yeah. And, I mean, that's the thing, though. Like 10 years ago, the idea that that one Bitcoin could even be worth 10K, that in itself would get you sent off to therapy. I like when I bought Bitcoin, it seemed really sensible to me that one Bitcoin could be worth well over the price of an ounce of gold. And so, like, your definitions keep stretching to accommodate where Bitcoin is going. But I think when the true supply shock hits, you'll see repeated God candles. You'll see up $10,000 today, up $15,000 tomorrow. I think that. I mean, and that's the only prediction I really have concerning Bitcoin. It's that most people just aren't ready for what's going to hit, and that is they don't appreciate what a true digitally based supply shock will do to the price. And the effect that it will have will be just so much greater than a gasoline crisis or a silver frenzy. It's just going to be a different level of order of magnitude when you've got a truly scarce, finite digital asset versus something that can be mined and given a more elastic supply.
Yeah, and we never had this. Like we always trying to figure out what Bitcoin will actually do. And yes, of course, we can look at past inventions, we can look at past events, but we never had a global digital scarce asset that 8 billion people have a reason to buy.
Yeah, and I travel far more than most people. And I mean, so why did I write this essay? I wrote it because I haven't made a dime for that essay. There's no advertising on it. I pay my own hosting fees. Like, that essay was as pure of a gift that I can give, because it was just all cost and nothing received in return. And I fundamentally wanted my Bitcoin basics essay to be like my gift to the Bitcoin universe. And I wrote it because as I travel around the world, it doesn't matter if it's the 21-year-old girl in Vietnam making me coffee, or the 60-year-old Japanese couple at the coffee shop I go to who grind the coffee, like or the guy who works up the street from them who owns the local bakery. Like, none of these people own Bitcoin. None of them. It doesn't matter what country I go to. Like, the percentage of people who I encounter who actually own some Bitcoin, it's still well under 1%. And I got to tell you, Robin, that is heartbreaking to me. Like, I mean, one of the things I feel best about in my entire life is that virtually every single person who is a real friend of mine, every real person in my life who I love, I have orange pilled. They, with only, I think, one exception, uh, uh, they all own some Bitcoin. In fact, in most cases, I have many friends who own more than 10 Bitcoin because of me, and many more friends who have life-changing amounts of wealth because they listened to me 5 or 10 years ago. And I made it my mission to just keep irritating them and pestering them until they finally broke down and bought some, because I could see where this was headed. And, I do make a point, like, it makes me so happy to know that the guy in southern Japan who runs the bakery that I like to go to, I turned him onto Bitcoin and he bought some. And he didn't buy a lot, but it was a lot to him. And he owns well over one person's worth of the world's Bitcoin, which, as you probably know, Robin, is 0.0027 Bitcoin. That's one person's worth of Bitcoin, and he owns multiples of that. And he's watched it triple over the last year since he's bought it. And that feels really good to me. I think that, non-obnoxiously advocating for Bitcoin and being kind of, an evangelist in the non-spiritual sense of the term, somebody who's just super well informed, yet not fundamentalist or dogmatic, and who can win people over. It's one of the kindest things you can do. Like, it just feels really good. Like, maybe there aren't too many people who can say this, and I don't, I don't want to sound like I'm patting myself on the back, but I know that there's at least a dozen people who I am friends with and know of who own appreciable amounts of Bitcoin because of me. And I have no idea how many people of the several thousand who read my essay went on to buy some coins as a result of what I did. But, it's like, one of the things I'm going to feel best about in my life when I'm on my deathbed is that I orange pilled a whole bunch of people and got there and got them to have, life-changing amounts of wealth. I mean, that's just that's a real blessing to give to other people. And I feel so much satisfaction that I have been able to do that for the people I care most about. I hope that, now the trouble with Bitcoin is that, as you know better than nearly anyone, there's just so much to it. And to understand Bitcoin, you really need a rudimentary understanding of macroeconomics. You need an understanding of how currency is created and what fiat currency actually is. You need to have some technical aptitude and some understanding of cryptography and how that works, and how that can be married with a script that basically the script that underlies the Bitcoin network, and peer-to-peer sharing of a distributed ledger. I mean, this very quickly goes off the rails to something you need to be a CS major to really understand. But you need a high-level understanding of so many discrete things. And one of the things I've noticed with Bitcoin is that I have a few friends who are pretty established as hardcore scientists. I can think of two different friends of mine who are actually science professors at universities. And you would think that people with that degree of intellect and that degree of going down into the weeds would be the first people to really get a real grasp of Bitcoin, and that they'd be much better positioned than your average duck to learn about Bitcoin. But the reality is that those people are actually it seems like those very skills have made them so hypercritical, that they overthink everything and can't really get the big picture. So it's funny how that works. But I think that some of the smartest and best educated people I've encountered are actually the hardest people to orange pill, and that all of their intellect kind of works at cross purposes with them just breaking down and just saying, okay, maybe I'm wrong, but I'll put 1% of my wealth into Bitcoin. So it's funny how that works. But I guess just to tie up this rambling this rant into a bow, I really want to encourage people to realize that you can accomplish a lot by just making an effort to orange people. And if you haven't read my essay, I hope you will, because even if you're pretty far along in terms of understanding Bitcoin, you might decide that this is the best single thing to recommend to newbies to begin connecting the dots. Everybody has to start somewhere. I say in my essay that you need 100 hours to really grok Bitcoin in kind of a coherent way. But you got to start somewhere. And my essay intends to be the place where you learn, where you spend your very first hour and get your basic orientation.
And for everyone wondering where they can find that article, I always link the Twitter of my guest in the link down in the description. And I think, if I remember correctly, in your Twitter bio, you have a link to that very article, right?
Yeah. It's just the DN, as in do not, dncomply.com. You just go to that website and the essay is right there. Really proud to say I don't have Google Analytics on the site. I don't have any advertising. I don't have any links to shitcoins or any of that. I've just, this is certainly one area of I aspire to live a life without compromising. And one of the nice things about Bitcoin anyway is that if you're doing any kind of Bitcoin advocacy, that's like a really obvious area of your life where you can just choose to be as pure as the driven snow. And hopefully from that foothold, you can branch out into other areas of your life and just continue to up your integrity. And so if there is a way to publish my essay with a greater level of purity, I don't know it. I've done everything I could to just put this online in a way that there's just no compromises, no ethical compromises at all.
Let's take a break for a moment and appreciate the beauty that Coin Vigilante has made with the Bitcoin watches. Those watches are the most amazing, the most elegant way of showing that you are a true Bitcoiner. And Coin Vigilante just dropped a completely new and amazing Genesis edition of their watch collections. You have the date of the first ever mined Bitcoin block in there, and of course also the block height and which epoch we are currently in. I love the level of detail they put in this masterpiece. Make sure to check out those amazing Coin Vigilante timepieces down in the descriptions. I love those watches so much. And now, if you have Bitcoin, I really do hope that you don't have it on exchange. But if you do have it on exchange, I have two ways for you to deal with that. The first way is you put it on a hardware wallet. That's the entry for you to get into the self-custody game. I recommend BitBox, Bitcoin only edition, for that. It's a super simple and secure way. And if you check out the link in the description, you even get 5% off if you use the code Robin. And the second way is the Bitcoin Way. The Bitcoin Way is your all-in partner in terms of how to get the most out of your your sovereignty. They will personalize for you a self-custody setup that is perfect for your individual situation. They will show you how you can secure your own devices. Securing your Bitcoin is not enough. You also have to keep all your devices secure. One topic that is overlooked often is the inheritance plan. What happens with your Bitcoin once you are no longer here? Do you have a plan for that in place already? And last but not least, if you're in the jurisdictions where you don't feel safe, it's better to get a plan B. For all that, head over to thebitcoinway.com/Robin to get a 30-minute free call. And just a quick side note, I will be for the first time ever speaking at the Bitcoin Prague event in June. It will be absolutely legendary and I'm really looking forward to seeing all of you there. You can get your ticket in the link down in the description of Bitcoin Prague, and very important, use code Robin to get 10% off your ticket. I'm really looking forward seeing you there. I really admire that on you because we haven't talked about it, but people obviously know you are here anonymous. So you also don't take any personal credit. So you don't take money and you also don't take personal credit. I think we touched on it the first time directly with like why it's important to be private, or like why people choose to stay private and not be outspoken. And it's really admirable.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I think that like everybody needs to be the focus of attention for at least some portion of their life. And if you don't get that small but significant amount of attention at some point in your life, you're always going to feel kind of left out. And I think that's actually one reason that the wedding industry exists, which I regard as like, that it just makes me sad. But, I think there's people who just never get to be the focus of attention. And so they spend tens of thousands of dollars on this one day where they, God damn it, are going to be the focus of attention for this one miserable day. And that's their big thing. Like for the one day they get to be Cinderella or whatever. And, it just makes me sad because it's like, you're the attention you receive in life, hopefully should be a result of having done something meaningful. And obviously your choice of getting married and who you marry, that's a meaningful thing. But I would hope that at some point you could get your recommended lifetime allowance of recognition through means that have nothing to do with who you marry, and that can't be bought. And I'm not Tom Cruise or Tom Waite or any of that, but I have received, what next to them is a tiny amount of recognition, but it's for things I've done in my professional life, and that's enough for a lifetime. So I decided that I don't need to have any personal recognition for the contributions that I've made with Bitcoin. People have given me plenty of pats on my back during my life for all sorts of things, and I don't need any more. You get the point. You can only drink so much water. You really only need so much recognition. And so when it comes to Bitcoin, I've just decided to bypass recognition. And it feels really good. It feels really pure to just put something out into the world and not care at all about how many people recognize you. I mean, I do care. And one reason that I'm making time for this podcast, apart from the fact that I genuinely admire you and enjoy talking to you, Robin, is that I am hoping that another 1,000 people will read my essay and pass it along and all that. But as far as getting additional recognition, well, that's not part of the game. And in fact, it's done under a pseudonym, which makes it even more pure. If DN Comply gets a few more links or a few more Twitter follows, well, good. But nobody who knows me is going to know that, and I don't. That's not what drives me. And I don't know. I think that obviously my gift to the Bitcoin world is minuscule compared to others, and especially Satoshi, who's the embodiment of selflessly and not pseudonymously giving a gift to the world. But I think we can all aspire to do some stuff without any payback, any recognition. And, I've done plenty of things in life for which I've gotten monetary and recognition rewards, but it feels even better to do something knowing your intentions and motivation are absolutely pure. And it feels even better.
I love that. Yeah. Have you thought about like writing something longer than an article, your theory in like a book or something?
I think the next thing I do is going to be some technically based introductions to self-custody and Bitcoin, probably even more entry level than Ben's stuff, because I think that if I'm right and there is a supply shock incoming, like having the most rudimentary introductions to people who are just as non-technical as you can get is going to be of profound importance. So I think that's what's coming next for me. I mean, I do. I mean, earlier this year, I wrote about 30,000 words in a few months. It was just kind of daily writing, but that was just it was semi under my real name, so I'm reluctant to give that out. But it was just like every morning I would get up and write 1,000 words and publish it on WordPress. And I think some of my friends knew it was from me, but I'm always going to be I mean, if you reach a certain point at being a musician, you're probably going to do music every day, every week, just because that's part of what you're best at and what you do. For me, it's writing. That's kind of what I'm best at. I'm always going to be finding something to write about, and I happily go weeks at a time without writing, and then I'll immerse myself into it, and it's just having a balance. But yeah, I mean, assuming I've got a few more decades ahead of me, it's really unthinkable that I'm not going to be writing hundreds of thousands of more words in that time. I don't know what they're going to be, but if I'm right that a supply shock is coming, there's really nothing more important I can do than to provide introductory material, because I mean, you undoubtedly know that story about the guy whose girlfriend threw away his hard drive with $1 billion worth of Bitcoin on it, and it's sitting in a garbage dump somewhere. And that is something where, like, rudimentary education, that's something it could have prevented. I mean, I guess the thing is, like, there's no doubt in my mind that I have enabled people, including many people I care about, to collectively buy well over 100 Bitcoin. So that's a nice contribution to the world. Maybe I've enabled people to buy 1,000 Bitcoin. I don't know, but I think it's into the hundreds of Bitcoin that I've enabled and encouraged the purchase of. So maybe what I do in my second act is that I enable people to avoid losing several dozen Bitcoin. because I think that's going to be a big thing. I mean, we've got, we have ideologically pure people within the Bitcoin community who kind of look down their nose at the ETFs and view that maybe even as an attack on Bitcoin. But I think that's kind of fundamentalism. The reality is that, grandma is not going to be keeping her private keys and validating it against her node. That's just not going to happen. And if you want inclusiveness within the Bitcoin world, encourage self-custody for the people who can really and truly do it. But if you have, talked somebody in to a level of custody that they're not actually competent for, and then they lose their keys or get hacked or whatever, I think that's on you. And so I think there's some responsibility that comes with being a Bitcoin advocate and not rushing people along to take on responsibilities that they're poorly equipped or even outright incapable of adopting to.
That's very true. Yeah, like not only getting people. Like the first step is obviously like if there's a flood coming, you want to get the people on the boat, and that's the first step. But then you also have to make them learn how to swim, make them learn how to deal with the boat, and like make them learn how to deal with it. So they're not only on the boat, but they also don't fall off, and they can deal with the water. If that analogy makes sense, so I admire that a lot.
Well, it's funny because, yes, there is a flood coming financially. And what's unique about Bitcoin is that you get to decide whether you're going to buy yourself a life buoy or a small lifeboat or a actual raft or a nice sailboat that you can just hop into. Or, I mean, you get to decide how much insurance you want to take out against this flood that is certainly on the way. I mean, this stuff happening with Trump's tariffs. I mean, not to come out in favor or in opposition to those things, but I can tell you from a macroeconomic perspective, something radical needs to happen or there will be outright disaster. And we can debate whether tariffs, I mean, there's certain schools of economic theory inspired by Smith that, just outright declares all tariffs to be evil and counterproductive. I'm not sure how true that is. And, if you have an historical understanding of tariffs versus income taxes, it all becomes pretty muddy. But the market chaos that grew out of out of Trump's tariffs proposal, the fact that could kick off these incredibly violent oscillations of the market just shows you how close to disaster we are. And whether you take the Trump approach of announcing 100% tariffs, or you take the Biden approach of kicking the can as far down the road as you possibly can and denying reality, it's going to end in there are plenty of tears. This flood coming is going to be salty from tears. It's going to hurt a lot of people, and it's past time to be thinking about how to reduce the amount of wealth that you are storing in fiat currencies and in assets that have already been bidden up to multiples of their historic worth. Here I'm talking, of course, about equities and real estate. I mean, it's just like some degree of divestment is appropriate, and Bitcoin seems to be like a rational thing in which to stick at least some of your assets in the event that that things go off the rails. And yeah, I mean, it's I as you know, I don't really make. I'm not one of these guys to get on the podcast and you got Michelle McCory saying, "What's your forecast?" She inevitably goes, "What's your forecast?" She'll work that into every interview, and it's like, your Bitcoin forecast, giving somebody a number is like the cheapest way to get attention. And I don't have any forecasts other than I do think that some form of economic calamity is inevitable. And I think that, we are really on the precipice of not just increasing numbers of people, but increasing numbers of corporations and nation states and United States, for that matter, as seen in New Hampshire and elsewhere, getting on board. And so on the one hand, we have impending calamity, and on the other hand, we have impending God candles. And I can't tell you when. Don't care about the price. 1 Bitcoin equals 1 Bitcoin, but things are going to change radically. And, Robin, if we accomplish nothing from this show other than to persuade a few people that owning 0 Bitcoin, being a no coiner, is wildly irresponsible, if we accomplish nothing else from today's show than that, then as far as I'm concerned, this was time extraordinarily well spent.
This is why I love going to conferences, because there I hear the actual real life stories that the podcast has an impact on. In El Salvador, someone came up to me and said, like, "Hey, your podcast, like my podcast, orange pilled me. It was like the first Bitcoin video I saw, and I just went down the rabbit hole and went through all the guests, and I bought Bitcoin because of the podcast." And I'm like, there's like, I orange pill a person without even knowing them. And this is a real life impact I had in Bitcoin, in the world, and in his small, in his world. So like, if the podcast just does that, that's already an amazing accomplishment for me.
Oh, hell yeah. And I think that with this story you just told, the real impact of that story is not the moment that you heard that this person now owns, X number of Bitcoin. No, the real impact of that story is that it sounds to me like you've created a hodler, and that 50 years from now, this person and his family will still own some Bitcoin that they purchased this year as a result of listening to your show. So, there's this important concept you frequently hear from Bitcoiners about not just wealth, but generational wealth. The idea that, like, the Bitcoin I buy today is going to be owned by my children and by their children and by their children. Like, and the fact that, Robin, your podcast, the story is not that you encouraged one guy to stop being a no coiner. The real story is that you may have had a tangible difference in setting up a family to have assets that last multi-generations. And that's the impact you had. I mean, which is pretty, if that doesn't make you feel good about what you're doing and let you sleep like a baby, I don't know what will. I mean, I can't imagine anything more important than that.
Thank you so much for those kind words. Yeah, it's almost scary to think of what impact, the positive impact you can make with just putting out a video and trying to do your best of educating people.
Yeah.
I there's like one aspect more to that, and I never talked about that on the podcast. It's completely unrelated to Bitcoin, but I've seen that because you also write a lot. I've seen that people who write are extremely interesting guests. Like, I don't know what it is with writing and being an interesting person, but I see that those two are just correlated. I just wanted to get it out because you said previously you write a lot.
Well, I mean, writing is just verbal expression, and if you spend, it does change your brain. It allow. I mean, if you spend a couple of hours a day writing, the words come quicker, the words come easier. One of the big cliches within and about writing is that writing is a muscle. And if I spend 3 hours a day at the gym, you're going to see it, in my body. If I spend 3 hours a day in front of my word processor, I'm going to express myself differently than if I didn't write. Just like if I played guitar for 3 hours a day, I'd be somebody you would want to listen to. It all depends on where you're channeling your expression. But I think that. Yeah, I mean, people who write will. I mean, there's basically two blessings that accompany writing, apart from the actual books that are produced. The first blessing is that immersing yourself in churning out words every day and to the best of your ability will enable you to not only choose better words but to think more clearly, and you'll and this will impact the decisions you make, and you'll make higher quality decisions. You'll have a happier and life and probably more wealth because you're thinking more clearly. And then the other thing is that you know being a writer can turn even pedestrian thoughts. It can allow you to say them elegantly in a way that makes it less of a chore for people to listen to you. So, like I couldn't have expressed that last paragraph as well if I couldn't incorporate the word pedestrian into how I phrase this, and without the ability for words like that to come easily to mind, you may not be able to express yourself in ways that keep people wanting to pay attention.
It's something I personally have to work on. I'm not a writer at all. I'm actually failed in my English class, and I almost failed in my German class. So like writing and speaking was never my thing. But with the podcast, I kind of get forced into it.
Well, I think that for what your podcast is about and what you do, the most important skill that somebody like you can have is your ability to listen and to ask good questions. And for that, you don't need to be David Foster Wallace or Richard Rhodes. You can just be a regular person, because I can make the case that people who can carefully listen are in even shorter supply than actual writers. Everybody wants to talk, but the amount of people who can actually dial in and pay close attention and listen and not just spend that time thinking of what they get to say next, that puts you into really rarefied company if you can do that. So, I mean, you've got all the tools you need. I mean, the reason you've had so much success already with this podcast is because I know how hard you work at it, and you could not apply yourself with greater diligence to this work than you're already doing. I mean, you've done some really impressive things, and I'm looking forward to see where you take this podcast over the next few years.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's I'm out of my rookie year now. I'm doing it now for 14 months full time. So I'm out of my first rookie year.
Well, if I may, I just want to tell listeners who are on Twitter or Noster or, God forbid, Instagram, hey, tweet one of these shows. You know, I mean, like, if you do nothing else for Bitcoin, find one of the podcast episodes from this show that you particularly like, and make sure that a few friends listen to it. Maybe they'll subscribe. But you know, if you're not going to ask for money, or you're not going to be trying to sell things, you know, at least ask your listeners to step up and give this show a push. And I think one of the greatest things that people don't realize, that so much of your success, either financially or in terms of moving the needle on something important, is just your ability to ask. You know, can you make a small, reasonable requests that people will feel inspired to say, yeah, sure, I can do that. So, you know, let me just ask on your behalf, your listeners, hey, if there's an episode of that Robin has done recently that you think is particularly worth sharing, hey, can you stop the podcast right now, go on to Twitter, go on to Noster, and just tweet that episode, and then come back. I mean, that's the kind of thing where you can step up and really make a small but meaningful difference. And I think a lot of the recipe to having a happy life is to being able to stop what you're doing for a moment and help a brother out.
That's so sweet of you. Thank you so much. Yeah, it does help. This does help a lot. I want to get back to one more thing about the supply shock, because we have a lot of people that raise concerns. Oh, like, we have all those great big companies coming into Bitcoin and buying a lot of Bitcoin, like Strategy, Semler Scientific. We have BlackRock. I think last week it was like they bought 5x or 10x the supply that was going mined. They bought something like that. Are you at all concerned that they play around with paper Bitcoin and that thing?
Well, I things have blown up before, things have blown up again, and if you're not going to do the self custody, I will say that I think it is exceedingly unlikely that the likes of Fidelity or BlackRock will monkey around with paper Bitcoin when it comes to their ETFs. And I own significant MicroStrategy stock too. So obviously I have bet that Saylor is legitimate and a man of his word, and not trying to game things. And I think he's acting on integrity. And if I'm wrong, I'm going to lose that investment. So, I mean, that's my bet. I'm not saying that I know for sure, but I think the further away you stray from the likes of the Fidelity or BlackRock ETF, the more likely you are to be rugged or rug pulled. And so that's something you got to be careful about. But I think that, again, for our hypothetical grandma who thinks that Facebook is the internet, if she wants some exposure to Bitcoin, and, you know, she may really understand that, you know, one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin, and that this is true scarcity on an order you can never have in the physical world, and she gets that, then I think, you know, it's going to be really hard for her to have a better way to gain a stake in Bitcoin than by buying the Fidelity ETF. In my opinion. And I know that there's people who would just violently foam at the mouth and object to what I just said. But what I care more about than appeasing the purists is that grandma doesn't lose that generational wealth because she just didn't have the ability to take out some titanium seed plate and, do a checksum on her node. I mean, come on, that ain't going to happen. So, I guess the thing is that outside of my Bitcoin life and my own advocacy, where I am a true subject matter expert, I'm fundamentally a pragmatist. I don't think that we're going to have that shining city on a hill, that there's always going to be some amount of fuckery and incompetence, and nobody's always going to have the purest intentions and motivations in every way, and things tend to fail. And I think you have to meet people where they are and help them into a lifeboat.
I very much agree with that, and it's very, very beautifully said. And it's also the reality of self-custody. I think there is a spectrum of self-custody. You can make it as pure as you want. You have in different cities, in different continents, multi-signature, nobody else knows about. There's many different setups you can do. But then there's also the BitKey, which is a great solution for people that might not as be technical. They just want to have an Apple kind of device that works seamlessly. And then there is things like an exchange, an ETF. This is on another scale. So I think we're just starting to see different solutions, and they will come on all of the spectrum, 1,000 more different solutions, and there will be something for everyone. And not everyone will have the full titanium seed plates.
And I do think that if you're gonna put more than the equivalent of, say, $1,000 US into Bitcoin, it makes sense to have several different piles. And I'm not going to advocate for any one thing, but I mean, hypothetically, maybe a little bit self-custodied, and maybe a little bit FBTC, and maybe a little bit MicroStrategy. Again, you pick your own poison, and I'm not suggesting any of those. I'm just saying that if you have 3 different piles of Bitcoin exposure, the chance of them all getting hacked and vaporized or rugged goes to 0. Just avoid shitcoins. Shitcoins are not Bitcoin. And take this opportunity to go into Google and type ETH to BTC and bring up the 1-year chart of that, and you can watch Ethereum bleed out in real time as measured against Bitcoin, because people have just lost trust in that entire ecosystem and the latest change of narrative to the latest shiny object. Just stick with Bitcoin and find a way to gain some exposure to the limits of your ability. Yeah, look at that. That's the most beautiful chart on the internet, isn't it?
Yeah, for the people that just listen, I just pulled up the ETH BTC chart, and it's down 61% in the past year. And it's actually even the past 5 years down. So the past 5 years, it had some small up run. And it was somewhere around the 2022 mark where I think they switched from proof of work to proof of stake. Yeah. And ever since that, they're just going down in almost a straight line. It's a quite straight line, honestly.
Yeah, but the last few months, that line down has even steepened. I could look at that chart all day, and, it needs a musical soundtrack and some animation, but I don't know. Is it in your language, Robin? Do you have the word schadenfreude, or is that a adjacent language?
It's German, yeah, schadenfreude. It's like if you're happy that someone else is failing.
Yeah, I try to be a good, kind, nice person, but I feel endless schadenfreude about the fate of Ethereum, and it just fills me with pleasure, unalloyed pleasure.
I think that's a great ending point for the podcast. We have two more questions. As you know, one question is always the same for each guest. I actually don't know. You were so early on, so probably even I didn't ask you. I always ask now guests the question, what have you learned since the last episode we did outside of Bitcoin? The first time they're on, so because I didn't ask you, I always ask, what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think my life in the last year or so, I suffered a terrible loss, and I've been I've really come to grips with what grief is. Like you never really, there's two kinds of people. There's, people who know grief tangentially and have experienced a little of it. And I've experienced a lot, and it's changed who I am as a person. So that's what I've learned since the last show about how deeply sad it's possible to be. And, yeah, it's changed me in a profound way. And I guess what I would say regarding that is that, it's, beyond Bitcoin, everything you love could just vanish in a heartbeat. And that until you truly experience profound levels of grief, you can never really know what it is. So sorry for that bummer of an answer, but I mean that's made me into a deeper person. Sorry, so your second question, I'm sorry.
It's I don't know if it's 100% fitting to what you just said, but I want to bring it up because I just tweeted about that today, and it's extremely going viral. Actually, I've not seen, and that maybe it fits nicely, maybe not 100%. I will just share that with you. I tweeted out this, and it got 60K views. I never get 60K views on tweets. and I basically made that picture where someone is running behind Bitcoin. He's stacking Bitcoin, and then he has all the Bitcoin. He's basically dying rich and living poor. And I said, make sure you use your Bitcoin to get more life, not giving more life to Bitcoin. And I, in quotes, I said, like, coming from a man who is working full time in Bitcoin and devoting his whole life to Bitcoin.
I can tell you that the very first thing I do as soon as I get off this podcast is I'm going to retweet that cartoon image because it's pretty dead on. I mean, I still think like what's funny is that my quality or the things I buy, my purchasing decisions still haven't measurably changed. I just visited Hong Kong a couple of weeks ago, and I stayed in a $40 a night shithole apartment just because I like to live kind of simply, even though I don't need to do that anymore. But it should be, at the end of the day, abundance is not really a function of money. And abundance is just, and Bashar says this, abundance is just the ability to do what you need to do when you need to do it. And maybe that involves money, but more often than not, you can creatively do whatever it is you really want to be doing. And so at the end of the day, I mean, I will say that being a multi-coiner, I guess, being somebody who is certainly rich on paper, the real way it's changed my life, or the way it's added to my happiness, is knowing that I could easily fly first class to Europe at the end of this month, and it wouldn't change things at all. But I don't want to fly first class to Europe. What I want to do is fly second class to New York City for $100 on American Airlines, spend a day at New York City, stay at a halfway decent hotel, and then buy some off-brand $260 ticket to Norway and fly over there and nonstop. And for $360, I get to Norway and I see people I love, and it's how I got there. And I guess I could have flown first class, and knowing that I could fly first class is pretty cool. But I don't need to fly first class, and I don't want to fly first class. But I enjoy the fact that. I enjoy the fact that I am finding ways to accrete my total stash of Bitcoin, and more to the point that I've never spent a Satoshi in the last 11 years. It's been a one-way valve for me. I've only accumulated. I think let's just, to sum up this interview, let's just end with my saying that if you can't find a way for Bitcoin to make you happier, then you're doing it wrong.
It's so beautiful. I love it. It almost hurts me that I have to now ask you one more question.
Okay.
Because we have an end routine where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest is. So I will just throw the question at you, but we already covered it a little bit, as I said before. The question is, what's your best tip for orange pilling people?
So I should be answering that question, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, I mean, you're talking to a guy who spent 6 weeks writing an essay that I intend and hope will be people's default recommendation for orange pilling. So, to sum up, to give you the best quick answer to your question that I possibly can, I would say grab your listener by the lapels and say, you cannot be a no coiner. Do not own. I'm not here to tell you how many Bitcoin you should own, but don't own zero. Get off zero, and please, read this essay. And if obviously, if you have something, a resource that you prefer to my dncomply.com essay, please give that, but give them a place to start. Tell them, number one, being a no coiner should be off the table in 2025. It's insane. Do not own zero Bitcoin. That should be your one message. And then give them a place to start, whether it's my essay or something else.
Absolutely, I agree. I cannot fathom that there are still people with zero Bitcoin in 2025. Thank you so much, Mr. Comply or do not comply. It was an honor. It was really cool to speak again with you. Thank you so much for your time. Any last words?
Robin, you're continuing to be one of the people who I've called you the hardest working person in Bitcoin. And I don't know if that's true, but I know you're one of the hardest. And, you get back what you put into it. And the fact that you have applied yourself every single day, that you have applied ass to chair, as we've said before, not to write, but to podcast. And you make the kind of effort you do. You're changing the Bitcoin landscape. And you are making a really big difference. And I'm just really honored that you had me back on for this second interview. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much. Such kind words. Thank you so much also for your time to be on the podcast. And also thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye.